There's the bagel, and there's the hole. And you should keep your eye on the bagel. And all the other things that go on, they don't matter. What matters is bagel.
Good afternoon, or evening, TV viewers. We're back with another entry for Music and the Movies, the segment of my TV channel where film scores, sound design, cinematic context, and music's relationship to movies in general are discussed and pondered. It's been a while since we've had a Wednesday upload, so I'm hopeful that this midweek entry has plenty of punch to keep you going to Friday. Today's video involves two selections of media that, although different, contain some striking similarities when we take a closer look. First, we'll examine a comedy horror film produced by Toho Studios in Japan during the late 70s, titled House, or Hausu. Directed by Nobuhiko Obayashi, this movie showcases the group of friends stuck in a haunted house experience, even before Evil Dead was a thing, and it's laced with an array of purposely non-realistic special effects, a musical score largely written and performed by J-rock group Go Diego, and plenty of absurd comedy to lighten the mood, even if its attempts to do so result in an uncanny, even weirder narrative than one would expect. We'll get into the details soon enough. Let me preface quick. Spoiler alert. As in, there might be some spoilers if you choose to see the film. Second, we're going to explore the work of My Chemical Romance, a pop-punk group cemented in the legacy of the mid-2000s, but with songs and visuals that endure even into the present day. MCR and their Paramount leader, Gerard Way, are responsible for a gothic, emo-influenced sound that maintains a rapturous fan base, catchy music intertwined with graphic iconography, humor, fun, and spectacular live shows that their fans take care not to miss when they roll through town. Today's video will involve their 2006 album The Black Parade, and even more to the point, their song Welcome to the Black Parade, arguably their biggest hit and most recognizable jam to fans and casual listeners. I myself was never really into this group, but I'm familiar enough with their work to comment on it and observe how their influence trickles into life and music. Now, I said earlier that there were similarities between Hausu and MCR. Before I ramble on, listen to this segment of music. And now, take a listen to this segment. You probably noticed that these two segments are remarkably similar. Like our last video on music and movies, it's time to ask and hopefully answer a big question that popped into my head after viewing House for the first time. Did MCR sample this piano part from a Japanese film, namely from Hausu? Or is this just a coincidence? Music theory can be a decisive tool to figure out if two melodies or samples are the same. This happens quite a bit in copyright law, especially if one band is accused of ripping off another, or if an artist fails to credit a specific producer for inspiration or interpolation. Sometimes theory isn't the whole enchilada, and we rely on context clues for more information. Let me be frank for a moment. I'm not accusing MCR of ripping people off or trying to build a case that one studio picture from Japan is directly responsible for a seminal pop-punk anthem. My goal is to examine both closely to see if that inspiration was likely, and we might arrive at the answer that it is. But it's equally unlikely. Music theory and greater context will help us figure this out. Let's take a gander into the film Hausu and compare it to Gerard Way's biggest song in the universe. And I've still got a bagel for you, by the way. You know, for the road. If you're looking for a set piece for your Halloween party film marathon, or just feel like laughing and cowering on the couch at the same time, House, or its Japanese title Hausu, is the movie for you. Nobuhiko Obayashi's cult classic garnered critical panning and polite applause during its initial run in the late 70s, but over time it's become more revered to moviegoers and film critics as being influential to body horror and cinematic thrillers. Hausu trades in jump scares for more foreboding, uncomfortable visuals, and rather than front-loading its viewers with exposition, it starts off with a short story of the home life and school day experiences of its central character, named Gorgeous. As Gorgeous interacts with her school friends, Fantasy, Prof, Kung Fu, Sweet, Melody, and Mac, the movie starts off as funny and heartwarming, embracing light comedy while giving us the notion that this live-action film could have been adapted from a Saturday morning coming-of-age anime program. But the movie does turn on a dime frequently. We see Gorgeous try to make sense of her father's love life, grapple with the recent passing of her mother, and she wonders how to best enjoy summer vacation with all of her friends as the school year draws to a close. Naturally, they all visit a haunted house in the countryside, with the only permanent residents being her distant relative, Auntie, and her house cat, Blanche. The girls quickly realize that they're no match for the house or the supernatural abilities of Auntie and the cat. Yes, the cat has powers. I think it's implied that it's a yokai. Each girl experiences creepy and utterly insane transformations to their bodies and psyches as the haunted house meddles with them one by one, a concept that Sam Raimi would arguably perfect and fully explore in his Halloween thriller Evil Dead. Unlike Evil Dead though, the special effects in Hausu are not all that sophisticated and usually come off as unintentionally funny and quite absurd. Obayashi, before directing feature films at Toho Studios, jump-started his career by directing and producing television commercials. These included the same kinds of bizarre animations and wacky effects. I'll leave it to you to decide if the overall vibe seems to work or if Obayashi was insane for making the film this way. Now for the music. I said earlier that the popular Japanese rock group Go Diego was responsible for much of the film's score, and it really pays off. During the comedic moments, the 70s rock and roll and psychedelic pop really shine, and some of Go Diego's songs are even sampled in the first third of the film to lighten the mood and maybe deceive viewers that they're in for a simple joyride. In the more frightening moments, trippier synths and rumbling rhythms paint a better picture for what's in store for the girls as they explore the house's secrets. Melody, the friend of Gorgeous, who is obviously the musical one of the group, visits a room to play the old piano belonging to Auntie. While comedy and horror ensue for her later, the first time she plays a tune at the piano becomes a moment that not only activated my MKUltra programming, but developed the seed of an idea that would become today's question. Let's roll the tape. What you just heard was a segment of the piano piece In the Evening Mist, composed by Issei Kobayashi and Miki Yoshino, the latter being the keyboardist of Go Diego. Before the film Hausu really gets into the weeds of uncanny horror, we're greeted with a touching scene of Melody playing this piece at the piano, and her friends admiring her musicianship nearby. Throughout the movie, Evening Mist is replayed and sampled extensively, becoming a musical motif during the more easygoing scenarios before stuff gets really weird, and used for more touching moments between Gorgeous and her auntie. Now, we're going to hang a left, exit the haunted house, and set our watches forward to 2006, because it's time to check out our second media selection of today. My Chemical Romance is a pop-punk, emo-influenced rock band that really hit their stride during the early to mid-2000s. The group, fronted by main songwriter and lead singer Gerard Way, was formed in New Jersey in September of 2001. And the timing of the group's founding brings up questions that have been fully explored, but I'm not going to talk about that. For the next few years, MCR would blaze themselves a trail in the hard rock and pop-punk scenes, with their debut record and sophomore effort becoming mainstays for their gothic-tinged fan base, and they contain many of their most well-known songs. But the group's 2006 project, The Black Parade, would become the biggest album of their career and has spawned some of their hugest hits to date. The track Welcome to the Black Parade, besides sharing the album title, was acclaimed by fans and critics, carving a place in nearly every live set onward and paving the way to cement itself as the band's biggest song. Some even claim that the song and its respective album are MCR's definitive high watermark, and I'd be a fool to disagree. It's easily their most focused and urgent work of the decade. While I'm not going to play much of their music, or even Welcome to the Black Parade in full, I am going to play for you that segment you heard earlier once again. For fans of the group and casual pop-punk enjoyers, this is a highly recognizable sample. Superfans of MCR that come to their live shows go absolutely crazy when that piano part kicks in, and they usually sing along to the melody before Gerard's voice breaks through. My coworkers even played this song a while back on our building's Bluetooth system, and I can't deny that it's fun and catchy once in a while. This had even happened right before I saw Hausu for the first time, so it's clear that this idea and its many strings and red tape have been tangled up in my head for a while to ponder this, but now we must investigate the possible connection between the film and the song. Well, actually, the answer is probably no. I can explain. Sampling music to create new songs is not a new concept under the sun. For decades, musicians and producers have taken things they find interesting and interpolating them into their own art, or have simply inspired them to rebuild the vibe in their own way. Artists like Cornelius, DJ Shadow, Oneotrix Point Never, and many more creators are familiar with this type of process. But for pop-punk groups like My Chemical Romance, this isn't quite as prevalent. And in the band's specific case, it doesn't seem to happen at all. When I reviewed their catalog once again, it was proven to me that MCR never really sampled anything to produce their songs. They may have been inspired by various gothic groups of the past, many of their members are influenced by pop and rock, but none of their songs directly sample or interpolate anything that came directly from another source. You could argue and debate this principle for groups and their sampling methods, like Led Zeppelin versus Taurus, The Verve versus The Rolling Stones, Robin Thicke versus... I'm not gonna talk about that either. But what about the song we did talk about? Isn't the piano part of Black Parade musically the same as In the Evening Mist from Hausu? The answer is still no. It's not the same. After surfing the internet, I found some discussion as to whether Gerard Way saw the film Hausu and decided to write Black Parade years later, after having heard the composition from Kobayashi and Yoshino. But this is where music theory comes in. Looking at the actual piano scores, the melody is similar, but it's not the same. Black Parade opens with a descending note pattern in G major, and In the Evening Mist takes slightly more melodic liberties with that idea, and it has a different phrasing altogether. That opening G5 in Black Parade feels a little reminiscent of the G4 that begins Evening Mist. But while the MCR tune stays on a simple note-by-note descent through intervals of fourths and fifths, Evening Mist takes a little longer to get there, and it adds more melodic contour before returning to a dominant chord. Even if you took away the left-hand rhythm part to Evening Mist, it's still clear that the two melodies are not identical, and it's unlikely that Gerard copied this movie soundtrack to write his biggest song. The rabbit hole deepens when we surf a bit longer and see that not only have people noticed similarities between the two, but also similarities between Black Parade and the Bryan Adams song, Sound the Bugle, that was included in the soundtrack for the DreamWorks film Spirit. You know, the horse movie. Even though the release of Spirit is closer to the release of Black Parade, it'd be silly to think that MCR built their hugest hit off of a new age pop track from an animated film about horses. I'm not saying it can't be done, but you just know me better than that. The reason that Evening Mist, Black Parade, and Sound the Bugle all sound vaguely familiar to one another is probably because of a different musical piece altogether. Piano nerds like me, and anyone familiar with this classical tune, will know that segment as none other than Pachelbel's Canon. Pachelbel's Canon has become sort of infamous in conservatories and recital halls, and the general vibe is that while it's a great study for newer pianists, it's considered overplayed these days, and it can sometimes be irritating for seasoned musicians to hear live. I'm probably safe in saying that Pachelbel is sort of the piano equivalent to walking into a guitar shop, immediately grabbing the most expensive axe off the wall, and awkwardly starting the intro to Stairway to Heaven with way too much distortion. Extra points if you have one of the associates get up on a ladder and reach the robot tuner Les Paul you want to play it on. So, what does this all mean? To answer our question, it's likely the musical selections, songs, and soundtracks we've talked about were at least in part inspired by Pachelbel's Canon. Everything we looked at was in G major. The original canon is normally in D, but it's easy to see in the score for Evening Mist, the piano part to Black Parade, and even a casual glance at Bryan Adams, that all three melodies borrow heavily from the scale descent that's featured in the piano canon. This classical tune from Pachelbel is a gigantic inspiration for lots of other work. And even if I'm dead wrong that any of these artists borrowed directly from it, like I said, we're going for likely or unlikely. And it does seem to be likely that subliminally or subconsciously so, these musical examples are similar not only in the way that they sound, but also in the way they were composed. There's only so many ways you can write a descending G scale with intervals spacing out the notes. Try as you may, you might find yourself composing for DreamWorks. Now, if we took Pachelbel out of the equation entirely, we might be left in a strange situation where Kobayashi and Yoshino had a stroke of luck and imagined Evening Mist one day out of the blue without any classical influence. Bryan Adams would have watched Hausu and remembered the tune for later when he'd write a song about horses. Gerard Way also may have watched Hausu and Spirit and filed away both melodies in his head for pop-punk purposes. And now we've created a conspiratorial notion that everything is linear and without nuance, since there's no longer a playbook for descending in G major using intervals. Now wouldn't that be silly? Thank you for tuning in to Music and the Movies once again. We took a dive into Hausu, My Chemical Romance, and some fascinating musical ideas to explore a question. To close out, remember that there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing is true, everything is possible, and keep your eye on the bagel. We'll just have to see how it goes. Hit the like button, leave a comment for discussion, and subscribe to this TV channel for more fun and games. This is Jack T. Russell, signing off for now. Good night!